but we each have issues our ages.
Mm-hmm.
It's in your mind, or in my mind, and I find from talking to my family or my friends that I don't think as old as I am. I think like I did when I was younger. And although it's if I talking to younger people and I say something that I might think in relation to today, it's not today. It's back in the 60s and 70s when I was younger.
So would you say you're coming from a perspective that's 30 years past,
Yes.
and trying to reconcile that
with what
50
is
years forward.
happening now, okay. and it doesn't. It doesn't. It really doesn't.
How does that make you feel when someone would look askance or not be able to relate to the perspective that you bring?
I don't have any feeling, adverse feeling to it. I just just feel, well, I'm showing my age.
Okay. You're showing your age, so there's no, are there any negative, or is it kind of, are you ambivalent to that in terms of emotionally? Is there any is it a mixture of emotions, or is it just kind of flat?
I'm sure it's a mixture of emotions. I relate to things, in the 50s, in the 60s and 70s, so much more than I relate to some of the things now. Although I try and keep up with what's happening at this time, because I have young nieces and nephews and well, nieces and nephews and grandnieces and nephews, where their world is much different than what I grew up with. I don't know whether that's good or bad. I think it just is.
Okay. So what stereotypes do you have of the culture that your nieces and nephews, or great nieces or nephews, or grandchildren, or even someone approaching now in his early 50s, what stereotypes are applicable, or consistent, or maybe just are misapplied?
The time we live in now is so different from the time I lived in. In being a 50-year-old now and a 50-year-old earlier for me, was different. How different? I don't think it was as complicated.
Why is that? Because what's going on in the world stage, or just socially, or?
All of the above. You listen to the news and you wonder, how can this be going on in this world? People supposed to have evolved in all these years to be better people, and they're not. They're doing hard things.
Would you say that culture is versus evolving is devolving?
I don't know that it's devolving as much as people don't care about anybody anymore. That's what it seems like. They don't care about their neighbor. They don't care about the guy down the street. They don't care about the guy you see getting shot on TV. And that's appalling to me. Our news is telling us all this stuff that's going on in this world, and yet we walk around like it's nothing. Not everybody, but too many people. And I think it affects the older people more than it affects the younger people.
Why is that?
Because some of them have lived through hard experiences in other countries, or in life in general. Their lives were not great, and so they saw, even though our world is more out there, blatant, you see whatever is happening, you see people in war getting shot, and mainly I'm speaking of the two we've got now in Israel and Ukraine. And you see where before, when I was growing up, and like Vietnam, that was our big war. You didn't see the horror. You heard about the horror, but it wasn't in front of your face as much.
Would you say that, I mean, if we reconcile the culture from which I'm at 53, 52, that things are still different from myself, from what my daughter is going through, but likewise something different from what you are going through. Would you say that with the advent of media and its tentacular reach, it's made it...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. If we didn't have media, whatever kind, we wouldn't see this stuff going on. And but we do. What people had saw in the generation before me, we are seeing now in this generation because of TV.
Would you say that it's better to be informed, or it desensitizes us?
I think it's better to be informed, that you know what's going on, and maybe get a little insight as to exactly what is happening. But it does desensitize you. I mean, it desensitizes people to the point that they go out and think that they can shoot everybody. I mean, we've got a bunch of people in this world, in our own country, that go around and think because you're the wrong color, you're the wrong age, you're just the wrong. Whatever's going on in their head, it doesn't have to be true or not, or true or false. We are condemning them and think they don't belong here, so I'm going to shoot you. Would
you say, if we kind of to maybe button that up, or not button it up, but to, I'm coming as a 52-year-old man looking at what don't want this to be I didn't want my daughter or son to grow up in a world in which we have, or the students I teach. But by the same token, I'm wondering, as a 52-year-old, is the trauma and violence and racial discrimination as potent now as it was in the mid 60s and 70s, or is it worse? What would you say?
Oh boy. I thought it was getting better for a while. And people were being more tolerant and accepting of their fellow man, regardless of whether they were black or white or purple or blue or whatever. They were being better about it. Now, all of a sudden, they're not. They are, it seems to be back to the way it was. Can I say it's happened since Trump was?
Well, we're not being edited, so it's your perspective. It's an interview, so that's fine.
I feel that it is happening since Trump came on the scene. He has made people look at other people like they're trash and they're not worth living, and bringing up things that died.
Well, would you say, though, to kind of segue from that, whether the reviewer or myself are of that same mind, people like of his ilk, of Mr. Trump's ilk, is he really stirring it up, or is he just fanning the flames of a fire that's already smoldering?
I guess it depends on what your upbringing was. If your upbringing was biased and bigoted against people, and with the way the country was for a while, where those traits were sort of pushed under the carpet so nobody would know that you felt that way. Now you're supposed to express this feeling of disgust for another human being because they aren't like you, or they don't worship like you, or a million things they can find wrong to criticize, when all they have to do is look in the mirror and they've got enough to criticize the person in the mirror.
Would you say that's, if we look at similarities between culture of someone in my generation, 50 to the baby busters, or where's the similarity? Are we still, what is the similarity between your culture or your people of your generation and my own, or even of your granddaughter's generation? Is there a similarity, that's something we can piece together, or are we all kind of just struggling to find our sense of self, our sense of identity?
I think we're all struggling to find ourselves, and that happens in every generation. But I think that I get angry. I mean, and I don't think I'm an angry person, but seeing somebody ridicule or hear of somebody getting shot because they are of color or their religion is different, I don't understand it. I don't understand it when God made us all. I mean,
As we will have to bring it to a close, I appreciate your honesty and your openness. If this were a counseling session, or if I were your therapist, what would you want me to know about you? One thing I'm sensing, you would want me to know your cultural sensitivity, your awareness of what's the needs and concern for the environment, which I think is for those within your environment, which I think is wonderful. Is there anything else I would need to know as if I were your therapist?
that I am a very emotional person.
Okay.
I really am. And I feel for others. I wish this world got along. I wish you could walk out the door and I go to an ethnic grocery store and I love going in it because you see all these nationalities together in this one little store. It's large for a corner store, but everybody's in there. Nobody is fussing at each other or anything. The one day I went in there, and I will remember this always. Here's a lady sitting in the middle of the aisle, nursing her baby. And it was so heartwarming because she felt comfortable doing that. Now, she obviously was from another country, and I'm sure they did that all the time, but they don't do it here. But it was wonderful, and I stopped and I talked to her, and or I took my granddaughter into that store, and she heard a woman speaking another language, and she said to me, "Is she speaking Spanish?" And I said, "No, she's speaking Arabic." And the woman turned around and I said, "You are speaking Arabic, aren't you?" She said, "Yes." I said, "My granddaughter wanted to know if it was Spanish." And I told her no.
Well, Ms. Damasio, thank you so much. We have to close out now, but as one last question, is there anything that in our dialogue that had made you feel uncomfortable or something you wish we would have asked or approached?
No.
Okay. Well,
nothing, certainly nothing that made me feel uncomfortable.
Okay. Well, again, I thank you for being...
I'm pretty verbal.
That's okay. That's helpful. Well, again, thank you, Ms. Damasio, for taking this time. Again, this is Dr. Kieran Kaler. I'm submitting to Dr. Max Langdon. And let's have a great evening, and we'll talk again.